all blog posts age well. However, this one I think is an exception. I posted it originally in 2015 as a recording of a presentation I had done for South by Southwest in 2015. That presentation was called Better Living Through Minecraft. For those of you who are not aware, Minecraft is a video game that has both single-player and multiplayer opportunities, both creative and survival modes. And in case you're wondering if it has declined in popularity since it began, the opposite is true. In fact, according to a report on active players as of October 2024, Minecraft had 185.7 million monthly active players, which was an increase of 3.65 million from September of 2024. Therefore, it seems timely to bring back this perennial favorite, where I talk about how playing and using and understanding the video game Minecraft can actually give us some important life lessons. So I'm going to get started. Hi everyone, my name is Mike Langlois, and this is Better Living Through Minecraft. The hashtag, if you want to be doing anything hashtaggy, is Lifecraft. And if you decide at the end of this you want to follow me on Twitter, you're welcome to, but if you don't, that's fine too. So let's get started. So, hi, I've already done that part, but I wanted to tell you a little bit about who I am and why I'm here. My job in the world outside of South by Southwest is I'm a psychotherapist and a teacher. I'm a clinical social worker who does therapy with children and adults and adolescents. And I have been to South by Southwest a few times, but the first time I was here was probably 3 or 4 years ago, at which point I was talking about rethinking gaming addiction. And it was at a time where there was a lot of stuff out there about how gaming was really addictive and caused violence. And there's still some of that stuff out there. But what I like about South by Southwest is I can come to you all and can tell you and know that you're going to sort of agree that I'm really not interested in that question anymore. That I'm not interested in what's wrong with video games. I'm going to talk with you today about how video games can actually make your life better. And I'm just taking that as an assumption because I'm tired of talking about addiction. And we're going to talk about how video games can actually contribute to wellness. In particular, we're going to talk about it with Minecraft. Now, Minecraft is a form of play, and I have been doing play therapy with kids and adults for about 2 decades now. And when I was first trained to do it, part of what I was trained to do was to ask, what happens next? And the reason I was trained to do that was because I had a really bad habit when I was a young therapist. I would be playing a game with one of my patients and he would say, there was a car accident. And my first thought was to say, is everyone all right? Which is the wrong question if you're a therapist. Because maybe the patient doesn't want everything to be all right. Maybe the patient needs to say that everything isn't all right. And so what I learned pretty quickly from my supervisor, who, by the way, had an amazing name for a therapist, her name was Linda Story, was how to get people to tell their stories by getting out of the way and asking, what happens next? So the next time someone was hit by a tornado, I said, what happens next? The next time there was a flood or a hurricane or another car accident, I said, what happens next? And over a long period of time, I learned how to be what we call a unique experience in the lives of patients. Now, I'm not saying that to brag. I'm actually saying that to reference a therapist named Virginia Axline, who once wrote this. She wrote, it's a unique experience for a child to find adult suggestions, mandates, rebukes, restraints, criticisms, disapprovals, support, and intrusions gone. And that's really what our job is when we do therapy, is to not do any of that stuff. Because kids, and then by adulthood, many of us feel as if we lack expertise in anything. We've been rebuked and criticized so much that a lot of times we only think that what we're good at is maybe screwing up our lives. So my job was to learn how to start asking people what happened next, and asking people what they kind of wanted to leave behind in their life. And that's where we come to the gravel. And that's where we come to Minecraft. Because in Minecraft, I have done a lot of shoveling, and I have become very acquainted with how annoying gravel is. It fills up your inventory bag. It is a real drag. Sometimes there's some flint, but usually it's not very valuable. So what I'm going to ask you to do now is I want you to think about your life. Think about one thing in your life, one situation that's irritating you. That's like the gravel in your shoe. The one thing that you want to get rid of. And we're going to let you get rid of it, at least for the next hour. So what you do is think of that thing, write it on the back of the gravel thing, and then put it together. And while you're writing that down and putting it together, I'm going to come by with my handy-dandy inventory chest, which is not going to fit everything. This isn't a TARDIS. It's not bigger on the inside. But I do have a handy-dandy bag. So what I want you to do is start writing what the gravel in your life is, what you want to get rid of. And then put it together in that block, and when you finish that block up, I want you to put it in here or in this bag. And I'm going to need a volunteer to pass this around. Thank you for being a volunteer. So make sure everybody's gravel gets in this chest while I do my presentation. And then if you can bring it up and put it on the table, that would be great. All right, so take a couple minutes. What is the gravel? What is filling up your inventory? What is just getting in the way and making things irritating? And make it an anonymous thing. Don't put your name on it. Make sure that nobody can know about this. While you're doing this, I'm going to ask you to think about a couple things. And one of the things I'm going to ask you to do is to think about if you've ever been in therapy. I'm not going to ask for a show of hands, but raise your hand if you've ever played a video game. Okay? Raise your hand if you've ever played a sandbox game. Okay? Therapy is basically like a sandbox game, okay? There is no way to win it. You cannot win therapy, okay? Therapy and sandbox games are similar in that they're potential spaces that can be shaped and altered by the patient, and something new can be created, just like a sandbox game. Therapy is an uncanny space, like some sandbox games, like Minecraft. We'll be talking about that a little bit, in that therapy resembles the world outside the office, but it also is different from the world outside the office. Therapy is a portal to the nether. Just like you wouldn't go to the nether and spend all of the time there. You kind of go in and get some stuff and then come back out because it's safer in everyday life. You don't go to therapy for 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It's sort of a portal into that part of yourself that sometimes is a little bit more dark and vulnerable. And then last but not least, both therapy and video games can create very real thought and feeling states in people. And that is part of their curative power. Part of the reason video games can cure, and part of the reason therapy can cure, is because they can create changes, very real changes. I can hear the clicking. People are putting their boxes together. Right. So for us to go forward, I need you to bear with me and accept these two premises. The first is that the video game is an art form. And the second is that art reveals something about what it means to be human. Okay? So that the video game is an art form and that art itself reveals something about the human condition. And why I'm so interested in video games is because, like therapy, games are based on models of the real world. A game may be regarded as a dynamic model of reality in which the model provides a representation of reality at a particular period of time or a fictional place. So what that means is that this is Donkey Kong. You probably remember Donkey Kong. If video games had no meaningful reference to the world we live in, they would also be unable to provide any sense of escape or entertainment. Okay? Barrels need to look like barrels for us to know they're barrels. Hammers need to look like hammers in order for the game to work. They need to resemble our experience without being seen as identical. Truly, gorillas needing to look like gorillas. And because they can do that, look sort of like the real world, but be sort of different, video games allow us to experience our thrownness in a new world and the animistic state of being inherent in what I'm calling the uncanny. And I'm going to talk more about the uncanny in a sec. But before I do, we're all sort of like Mario in this regard. We're all just visiting video games. We're always strangers in a strange land. But within that game world, there's always some sort of mana or magic or power. Sorry. And our thoughts and strategies can quickly and permanently change the world. All right, so let's get to Minecraft. How can Minecraft make life better? Answer number one is that Minecraft helps us make meaning of the world. Okay? Because let's face it, the world is a very anxiety-provoking place. It's a very uncanny place and can make us feel very anxious. And one of the founding fathers of psychology, Sigmund Freud, talked about the uncanny very specifically. He said the uncanny is a type of fear, a very specific type of fear, in which something is both strange but familiar. That he said, it's such a strange and familiar thing that it draws on the aesthetic quality, the artistic quality of the world. And from a distance, the uncanny can look aesthetic itself. So in fact, some of the things that you may be interested in, if you like creepy stuff like Lovecraft or creepypasta, is all about that uncanniness. That sort of, it looks familiar, but it also looks really alien. And so, without further ado, I'm going to give you an example. That is an example of the uncanny. Something spooky, something that looks sort of familiar but doesn't look familiar. Another element of the uncanny in Minecraft that's important to think about is the nature of the repetitive. Repetition makes the world seem both stranger and more meaningful. We can look at images in the game world and see a pattern, which indicates that it's got some sort of meaning that we may not understand yet. It hints at experiences that we aren't quite sure what to make of. The uncanny is from the German unheimlich, and it translates into unhomely or unhomelike. And this feeling of not being at home in the world is both alien and a revelation or an exposure. That this feeling of something being not quite home refers to what the philosopher Schilling once described in terms of the uncanny, which is the name for everything that ought to have remained secret and hidden but has come to light. Now that's pretty cool. The name for everything that ought to have remained hidden, secret, but has come to light. Other pieces of the uncanny you may have noticed in Minecraft are the apparent death and reanimation of the dead are fairly commonplace. And for any of us who have ever played survival, we know that there are skeletons and zombies everywhere. That's an example of how that uncanniness in that world is commonplace. Also pretty commonplace with more recent patches are the witches, which represent the element of the uncanny which refers to magic or secrets or the prompt fulfillment of wishes with secret injurious powers and with the return of the dead. So put this all together, and Minecraft's a pretty scary place sometimes. But it's not always scary, and part of why we can use it to make meaning of our experience has to do with something called hacks. Most of us are familiar with hacks, but for those of you who aren't, hacks come from originally what was known as an inelegant but effective solution to a specific computing problem. The equivalent of a hatchet, hacking at something. So the original meaning of hack in terms of technology was something that was effective but inelegant. And as time went on, people started to use this term of hacking to life hack, a reference to a solution to a problem unrelated to computers, but might occur in a programmer's everyday life. And we've now appropriated that so that we all kind of think about hacking life and life hacks. And it's this idea of finding workarounds, finding simple, inelegant solutions to problems. And that's where mindfulness comes in. Because mindfulness, which is sort of my bread and butter as a therapist, is one of the most important forms of self-hack. It's the ability for us to think about our thinking, even if it's a little crude, and somehow hack back into the way we look at the world and make meaning of it in a different way. Now, in order to do this, we need to value thinking as important. And that's where sometimes I have to do a little convincing to folks. Because although multitasking is not inherently a bad thing, there are times and places that intentional thinking may be more appropriate and less anxiety-provoking. So just to think about one thing can be very important and have value. And one of the ways we've most noticed this in Minecraft is when you're trying to eat a pork chop and you're trying to walk. And you can't do both at the same time with the same speed. Okay? Thinking is doing something. And when something is done intentionally, it occupies time and has benefits. Sure, you aren't going to be able to do other things besides eating pork chop, but that's the point. That the games that I tend to have the most problems or criticisms with are games where doing two things at once is always the solution. And what's great about Minecraft is you sort of slow down when you're eating the pork chop, because while you're eating the pork chop, you can't be doing the other thing just as fast. And when you want to think deeply and seriously about something, you really need to be intentional about it. You really need to sort of say, hey, I'm not going to eat a pork chop right now. I'm actually going to just think about this thing. Another form of hack that's very specific is memes. Memes are a way we hack our experience. Okay? Specifically, they help us use shortcuts in language like hashtags or images to communicate our human experiences to others. Everyone knows who Grumpy Cat is. Everyone knows what Grumpy Cat is probably going to say about something or what the attitude is. That constellation of knowledge and communication is a meme, which is a specific form of hack. Minecraft skins are also an example of that kind of hack, where we use skins to hack our experience to look like something, say Hello Kitty. And cosplay, for those of you that enjoy that, is also a form of hack, where you can communicate your interests, your video game affinities, your worldview, all by hacking cosplay. And that is what makes Minecraft so great, is that by using these shortcuts and the power of a playful community, Minecraft has actually given this amazing shared language to think about our thinking, to do a hack, to make mindfulness happen. And to think about your thinking is a prerequisite to be able to change it. You need to be able to know that you can think about your thinking, to know you have a choice to choose something different. So now I'm going to drill down, because I'm going to assume we all know about Minecraft a little bit and know some of these characters and love them, to talk about how Minecraft can make life better in terms of answer 2. Minecraft gives community and a place to practice getting along with others in the world. Okay? Let's face it, one of the biggest problems on the planet is other people. They're here, they're not going away, we bump into them every day, and we have to figure out how to get along with them. We can sometimes feel bewildered and surrounded by them and not know what to do, but we have to deal with the fact that other people exist. And part of how we deal with that is by learning how to take inventory, mental inventory. So normally when we're in a state of anxiety, we want to write the story for that other person. They're mean, they're bad, They hate me. They're out to get me. And part of what I have to try to help people with is to be able to say, why do we want to write the story for other people instead of asking them again, what happens next? What happens next? How can we just ask what happens next? Well, to do that, we need to take a look at what we've got going on in our head, the memes and things that we're already thinking, and how they structure the reality. So that's why we have this image of an inventory or a chest. That's the organizing image for taking an inventory. And what I did earlier was I asked you, what did you want to take with you after today, and what did you want to leave behind? You had the opportunity to decide what was gravel in your life and what you wanted to leave behind. And a lot of you did that. You put it in the gravel and you left it. You put it in this chest. And now is the fun part. Because now you all get to take a gravel. And whatever gravel you take, you have to leave with that problem or that irritation. So you have a 1 in 60 chance of having the same problem you did when you came in here, and you have a 59 out of 60 chance of having somebody else's problem. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask those of you who did a gravel to take one. If you didn't do a gravel, don't take one. And if you have your own problem, you're really stuck with it, just pass it around. Okay? But 1 in 60 chance you have of walking out with the same problem. Now you may think that's kind of strange, but what if it's a mental exercise? What if you can do that? What if you can say, hey, I actually left that problem in the AT&T conference room at Austin, Texas. I remember it. I put it right there, and it's not mine anymore. Now I've got this other problem. And that is an example of what we call looking at an inventory, taking some distance, and seeing that we have choices. And those are all components of mindfulness. So let's take a look at the inventory of Minecraft characters. Because we have a lot that we can learn about different parts of ourselves from each of these Minecraft characters. So take, for example, the Creeper. The Creeper is an excellent example of anger management issues, as well as what happens when we're interrupted when we're on task. If you are doing your homework or you are doing work and your boss or your parent comes over and says, what are you doing? It's like a creeper blew up and all of your loot is now scattered for the next 30 minutes, because that's how attention works. If someone comes over and interrupts you, suddenly, kaboom. It also is very helpful for us to learn how to better approach people so that they don't get overblown. So one of the ways a creeper can be seen is learning how to negotiate with people that get irritable really quickly. You know, if you want the gunpowder, you don't want to just go in and hack at the creeper once unless you've got a really powered sword. You want to kind of go hack and then dance back a little bit, and go hack again and dance back a little bit. So the creeper turns out to be really good in terms of not only learning how to deal with anger management, but also learning how to deal with sex and sexuality. That when you're approaching people in terms of sex and sexuality, you don't necessarily want to go in an overwhelming gangbusters way. You want to sort of kind of take a look, take a sense of how they're reacting back and forth. Okay? Now, people sometimes think, why are you talking about sex in terms of Minecraft? And I have to say, first off, full disclosure, I'm not an employee of Mojang, I'm not an employee of Microsoft. All of these views and opinions are my own. Having said that, I think we can learn a lot about sex and how to have a healthy sex life from Minecraft. Because latency, that ability to be in that place and time in our life where we're playful, having that good sense of latency is an important foundation to having a good adult sex life. You need to be able to learn when you're playing about trust, about cooperation, about playfulness, because all of those elements turn out to be an extremely important part of having a healthy adult romantic life and sex life. So the creeper can tell us a lot about sex and anger management. All right, then there's the magma cube. The magma cube is a perfect example of how do you take a look at a problem and say, do I really want to take that on? Because the minute I go there, it's going to multiply into 4. Do I really want to deal with that particular person? Because the minute I do, I'm suddenly going to have 3 other people involved gossiping about this. Is this a magma cube for me? So you take a look at the magma cube as an example of how sometimes things can actually, if you don't leave it alone, multiply. And that doesn't mean you have to say, I'm never going to go after this magma cube. You just have to be intentional about it. You have to be able to say, you know what? This is going to get worse before it gets better. And how many of us do that in our lives, that we take the time to say, okay, I'm going to intentionally do this. It's going to get worse before it gets better. Did anybody get their own problem? Oh, I'm sorry, you're stuck. The two people, maybe you two want to trade. Decide if you want to trade.
Yeah, the same problem.
You have the same problem. So think about that. What does it mean that maybe some of you got the same problem written by a different person? Or maybe some of you looked at the problem and went, oh my gosh, I'm glad I didn't have that problem, and now I've got that problem. I wonder how that person handled it. I wonder how I'm going to handle it. Maybe some of you are like, gosh, I wish my old problem would come back. So another Minecraft meme that's important for us to think about are wither skeletons. Okay? We all have wither skeletons in our life. Who are the people in your life who drain you or make you feel especially vulnerable after you talk to them? What strategies can you come up to deal with certain people? You go, oh, that's a wither skeleton right there. I can tell. Every time I talk to him, I leave feeling more bummed out than I was 10 minutes ago. And then one of my favorite characters, which you may not think of as a character, is cobblestone. Unlike granite, cobblestone is such an amazing example of what it means to be human. Because cobblestone is so commonplace until you go to the nether. And then when you go to the nether, it protects you from any blast of any gas. And that's like us. We all have superpowers. We all have something, even the most commonplace thing about us, which can be superpowered in the right situation. And you need to be able to ask yourself, what is my cobblestone? What is there about me that people may think are commonplace or I may take for granted, but is actually a superpower in the right situation? And then we do have ghasts. Now, I did some focus groups, and I asked kids what their favorite characters were, and one of the ones they mentioned was ghasts. And when I asked why, they said they warn you when they're reloading. And if you think about this for a second, they warn you when you're reloading. Why is that a good thing? They hurl fire at us. Why do we like the fact that they warn us when they're reloading? And then I realized that's telling us something about trauma and recovery from trauma. Because one of the things we know in trauma theory is that people often choose familiarity over safety if the two are different. That people would rather deal with the ghast and know that it's screaming and know what that means than find themselves a different place or a different environment. And we see that with people that survive all sorts of trauma and abuse, that if they have to choose familiarity over safety, they often will, because they get used to taking for granted that this is the way things are. And ghasts are a nice lesson about the fact that we do that sometimes on automatic pilot, and maybe we want to rethink that. Then there are the zombie pigmen. Okay. They're fine until you do something to one of them, and then suddenly everybody gets all in a bother, and they all come and grab you. They all come and attack you. It's sort of like Facebook and Twitter. The minute one comment gets out there and it gets amplified, suddenly all the zombie pigmen come out. I'm not going to talk about that particular gate that we don't talk about in here, but that particular gate is an example of how mob mentality got really activated and really aggressive. And it's important for you to be able to notice when there's a group of zombie pigmen and notice, gee, maybe I don't want to go there. And it also is important for you to notice when you might be being a zombie pigman, because you might have the capacity to do that as well. And then there are zombies and villagers. What can zombies teach us? Well, zombies can teach us about one of the most important conflicts human beings have, which is, when do we need to let go of a relationship? When do we still think this is the person that I want to be with, this is who I wish this person was, when they're not that person anymore, and they're that person instead? That the central conflict about a lot of zombie drama is that people can't get over the relationship and letting go of it. They can't relinquish whoever that villager was and say, man, this is a zombie. They're not my villager anymore. They're now my zombie, and I don't want them to be my zombie. I think I need to go. So zombies can teach us about when we need to let go of relationships that may just not be good for us anymore. And then there are the Ender Dragons. The Ender Dragons, according to some of the kids I talked to, were loved, quote, because it takes a really, really long time to get to it. And that talks about how there's a part of us that likes to struggle, that likes to work hard towards a goal. There are kids that I've worked with and adults I've worked with who are failing in so many parts of their life, and yet they will play this game over and over again to get to the end. And when I talk with their parents and people in their lives, I say, what do you mean they're not resilient? What do you mean they give up? They have been trying to kill that Ender Dragon for 2 weeks now. So the Ender Dragon is an important example of how human beings have the capacity to build goals and work towards them, even though it takes a long, long time. And then there are the Endermen. There's a little bit of Enderman in many of us, I'd say all of us. We all get attached to things, strange things, things that don't make sense always to other people. And we hold on to them and we walk around our life and people look at us like we're weird. And yet we look at them and they've got a weird thing they seem to be attached to too. And that's because we have this capacity to form attachments with things that may not make sense to other people, but doesn't mean it's wrong. Last but not least, not a canonical character of Minecraft, but we cannot leave without talking about Herobrine. Herobrine first appeared in a single image detailing an encounter posted on 4chan and gained very little attention at first. But then when I asked my focus group about Herobrine and what they thought he was, they said, he's destructive, he's Notch's brother, the guy with no pupils, he's real, he's real. And the most important part, I think, was that last bit, that emphasis. Everyone would tell me this story of how they'd seen Herobrine. They were convinced. And Herobrine comes in several different versions, a ghostly version, a stalker version, and a vengeful version. And so the first thing we can learn about Herobrine has to do with organizational psychology, because Herobrine is kind of like your boss. If you think about your boss and you're not having a good relationship with your boss, it's usually either because he's a stalker Herobrine and micromanages you, or he's a vengeful Herobrine and he's undermining your work. But the other thing that's important to note in terms of organizational psychology is that if Herobrine had eyes, who would he look like? Steve, right? And so there we have the whole problem with management, is that a lot of times people working for their boss don't understand the vision, that this person is looking at something else. And the boss hasn't quite let go of being Steve and working in the old part of their organization. So that Herobrine actually provides us some really good ways to talk about organizational management. On a more existential level, Herobrine is able to help us talk about the power of belief for good or evil. We really, really believe Herobrine exists. We're convinced of it and we tell all these stories, and that belief matters because that belief has created a huge culture where people are all talking about something. And that's an example of how belief can be a power for good or for evil. Herobrine also is a good example of the strength of rumors and gossip in social networks. And last but not least, one of the reasons we like Herobrine so much is because human beings love to scare ourselves a little bit. We all love ghost stories that are a little bit scary. Last time I presented at South by Southwest, I was talking about creepers, and one of the younger members of the presentation asked me the question at the Q&A, how many creepers do you think are there out of all the people in the world? And my answer is approximately 7 billion. Because the point I want to leave you with from this answer is that everybody has a little creeper in us. We all have a little zombie pigman. We all have a little ghast, but we all have a little bit of cobblestone too. That any one of those characters that you thought was extremely annoying, there's probably a little bit of me in that one as well. And that, yes, we all have a little bit of creeper in us. So, how can Minecraft make my life better? The third answer is Minecraft helps people learn better. Now, that's not the point of Minecraft. It's not supposed to be an educational tool. It's supposed to be a game. But one of the things we've learned is that love and learning go hand in hand. Very famous current teacher, Nicholas Ferroni, has talked about how students who are loved at home come to school to learn, and students who aren't come to school to be loved. And what that has to do with is something that we call in psychology attachment theory, and the ability to learn based on attachment. Because being loved or secure attachment is a prerequisite for optimal learning. Being loved or secure attachment is a prerequisite for optimal learning. And here's how it works. If I have a secure attachment to somebody, I feel safer with them. My brain works better. I'm not always wondering what they're thinking. I feel calmer. I'm able to take in images of them teaching me things, which we call mentalization. And when I can mentalize things from this attachment figure, that's called learning. And now that I've learned a little bit, I've also learned that it's safe to attach to people again because they helped me learn stuff. So those of you that can remember that really good teacher, that was good attachment. Those of you that can remember that really bad teacher, that's attachment too. And the more attachment we have that helps us have good mentalization, the more we feel safe and able to learn. And so that with all due respect to the push for STEM research and STEM education that I see in South by Southwest and other places where we're concerned with STEM learning, I think we're missing the boat if we don't understand this simple fact. Social emotional learning is a necessary foundation block for any educational system to be successful. Okay? If people do not feel secure enough to think, then the educational system is failing. And if we neglect social emotional learning by over-focusing on the content, we're going to be producing generations of people that don't learn as well as they could. So I was originally going to stop the presentation there because my focus was how can Minecraft make life better? But then something really interesting happened the last month I was doing this research. And one of the things I discovered was that actually Minecraft helps people stay alive. This is a picture of the Golden Gate Bridge and a crisis counseling sign on the Golden Gate Bridge. And part of what I need to talk about right now is suicide. Because there is a crisis of suicide, not in the gaming community, but in the human community. And one of the things I noticed when I was searching online was things like this in Minecraft chats. Surveys that said, have you ever attempted or thought to commit suicide? And 32.5% of people said yes, and 67.5% said no. And so I started to do something very simple, which was Google public Minecraft servers with just these keywords, Minecraft server suicide or Minecraft server depression. And I found some pretty amazing things. Because what I found was that Minecraft actually had protective factors in it. And the Center for Disease Control in Washington, D.C., way back in the 90s, has talked about what protective factors are for suicide prevention. And they include personal resources, or inner psychological resources, such as self-efficacy, the feeling of being in control of oneself, and coping resources, coping and problem-solving ability, and real or perceived control. Those were all inner psychological resources that protected people from being suicidal. And as opposed to personal resources, we also saw that social resources were a protective factor, that community support and family support was crucial in helping protect people. And in 2005, the protective factor that we started to talk about in social work and in psychology was this factor of promoting connectedness. And so when I went to the servers, I found at least one forum on one suicide prevention site that was trying to start a Minecraft server for people at risk. I even found stories on Reddit alluding to members of a server community that called 911 and had police go to the player's home where they helped prevent him from completing suicide. And then I started to look at the chats. And where I don't feel comfortable presenting pictures of the chats because I want to protect some of the privacy of these people, these are things that you can see if you look at if you Google bulletin boards. And you start to see protective factors like this, like psychoeducation. So for example, one of the servers, I saw this particular quote. Where is it? You've been feeling depressed lately? No. You've been feeling sad lately. Depression is when you always feel down. That's all you feel is down. Maybe a good day every now and then, but you feel bad. Someone else wrote, however, for some people, me for example, our minds are completely clouded with negativity. I cannot see anything positive rather than negative. Minecraft may sometimes help over those loud thoughts of negativity, making us feel better and helping us. This was psychoeducation that people were actually giving to each other on the servers. I also saw requests for support. I saw people saying, I have pretty bad depression but no one to talk to. I like Minecraft, so I figured I would try this. I play on these servers. I'd like to make some friends. I'm 18, living in the northwest region of the US. Sometimes I can be a bit immature, but I can suppress that if it's a problem. And someone else wrote back under that, if you find a vanilla server, let me know. I would enjoy playing with you. Someone else wrote, hi, I wasn't expecting to come across this post, but it's kind of cool that I did. I'm 21, and I've been suffering from depression too. And we saw over and over again people asking for help on these servers. And then we saw over and over people offering help. Someone was feeling bad because they hadn't had anyone recognizing their birthday, and someone else gave them a cake. Someone wrote that they don't feel depressed, here's to another year. Again, not perfect interventions to help this person, but you saw people trying to offer support. Someone else wrote, if you ever need, I can talk. I know what you're going through. I know it far too well. It has sent me into the hospital and it just got me suspended from school. If you want, just ask me and I will give you my Skype. You can in-game or private message me. Besides offering support, I started to see comments that were offering community. Someone wrote, I've been depressed in the past, but you guys in this community has played a huge part in pulling me out. I've never told the server about my history. I don't intend to. But don't worry, I'm good now. Honestly, I don't think I would be as happy as I am now without you guys. You're all just so amazing and funny. I'm really glad I found this community. Someone else wrote, I myself went through a rough patch a few years ago and have no issue saying it since I'm through and past it. I was bullied all through school and it led me to have some anger issues. I tried the whole counseling thing and it didn't really work all that well, but then I found Minecraft. It made me feel like I was in a safe environment and was nice because you couldn't be bullied for what you looked like or did in life, because the people you met did not know. So over and over again, I saw people expressing how their servers were providing them with community, a protective factor for suicide prevention. I heard coping advice, not never dig down. But what I heard was, if you're feeling down, weigh your options. Would telling everyone make it better, or is it best to confide in a few close friends? Someone else said, if you do try to help someone who's depressed, remember they may just need an ear and a suggestion. Listen carefully. And then someone else wrote, suicide is never an option. Just think about it. If you do something to yourself, you hurt all of your loved ones, especially your parents. I also saw on the servers people expressing resiliency. People saying things like, I don't say this to many people, but I've attempted suicide several times, but now I'm getting some help. And then someone else wrote, for all of grade 6, I'm in grade 7 now, I was depressed. My parents would yell and swear at me on a daily basis, and my sports coaches physically abused me. I was behind in school, and I was really stressed about my exceeding amount of homework. My teacher would taunt me and make fun of me in front of the class. I also had very few friends. After almost 7 months of this, it really started to put me down. And it was like that through most of the summer. And then I rejoined these forums. Ever since that moment in mid-August, I have become a better person. Made more friends in real life and online, and I've been getting better marks. And for the last month, I haven't been depressed at all. Forums have played a vital part in making me happy. So since I can say I'm no longer depressed, I want to thank everyone who has helped me along the way, and the people that have made me happy. And so there you see how people are expressing resiliency to the point where they are now able to turn to gratitude, which in mindfulness means they've become able to have more space to think about things in a different way. And that's one of the things that I hadn't thought of when I started planning to talk with you about Minecraft. I had thought it would just be something that would talk about how it could make life better, not how it could actually save lives. Because it has saved lives. And that one of the things I've learned from these communities is that all of us sometimes feel a little different. And all of us sometimes feel a little bit alone. But if you can hold on, someone usually shows up. Thanks. That's the obligatory plug for the book, and I'm now very interested in having questions so we can have a discussion. And I don't know how much time we've got, so.
It's quarter of.
Quarter of, so that's awesome. I'm right on target. So I'm interested in having your thoughts and questions. Hi, I don't know if you can come up to the microphone or speak loud. Or...
For that last shot, did you find a picture online, or did you actually go into the game? How is it actually see each other?
I actually did that. Yes?
So, besides those other things, with Minecraft, is this even on? I don't think it is. Alright, I'll just speak loudly. So, I played for a long time myself when it was out with some friends, so we had the community going and all. But I'm a creative person, and I like to do art, but I also found that it was a great place to have a creative outlet because of the rapid development cycle to build humongous things that you really felt like you accomplished something, and I know my kids do it as well.
Yes.
Just thought that was something worth bringing up, and it's also a creative outlet for a lot of people.
So one of the things that you're talking about and representing is creative mode. And definitely I talked a lot about survival, but talking about creative mode is really important. Because one of the things that we know is part of human development is this concept called ego mastery. The sense that I can do things, I can have an impact on the environment, I can build. Recently I've been really excited, as I'm sure you have, to see that making and the concept of a maker is becoming such a powerful social identity. And part of what makes it so powerful is this concept of ego mastery. I can build things, I can change the world. And even in creative, it's not focused on survival, but what's wonderful about it is you leave your mark on a world that's different than before you got there. And that's really powerful for both kids and adults to understand, that you have an impact on the world, that you change what the world is like just by being here, and that it will not be the same place after you're gone. So I'm glad people are talking about creative mode. I definitely focus more on survival. Yes?
I'm a parent who has 2 kids who are addicted to Minecraft. I mean, it's like getting a crowbar to get them away from it. I know you talked at the beginning. About how you don't believe in sort of the addiction aspect of video games and such. But what about just the idea of overkill, if you will, too much Minecraft?
Yeah. I'm always hesitant about the using that term, because clinically there is not actually a diagnosis for internet addiction. I'm not sure what that is, but I'm going to stay over here. But I think that we tend to focus too much on how many hours somebody's doing something rather than focusing on what they're doing with it. And Minecraft is actually something that is extremely creative. And I guess I would wonder, what my first instinct whenever someone finds something fascinating is to be curious about it, because there must be some reason people are so interested in it. And over again, I have explored with patients, what is so compelling about this? And it's often the first time anyone's asked that question. I'll get referrals from people over and over again where they'll say, this person is playing 10 hours of video games. And I'll say, well, what are they playing? Oh, I don't know. Hello, this person is playing 20 hours of video games. Oh, what are they playing? Oh, I don't know. This person is playing 40 hours of video games. Oh, what are they playing? Oh, I don't know. Nobody bothers to ask what they're playing or what it means to them. And so my concern is if we focus right from the start about, regulating the hours rather than like, what is so compelling here? Tell me what it is. Or better yet, can you push over and let me play with you? Because a lot of times what happens with parents is they have what I call the over-the-shoulder view, which is they look over the shoulder and what they see is their kids zoned out because they're not immersed in what the experience is. But if you actually join that aesthetic experience, a lot of times you'll start to find out what it is. And you'll start to find that they're learning all sorts of things. On servers, they're learning social emotional stuff. They're also learning all sorts of educational pieces. And they're all, the other thing is if you listen to some of the conversations that people are having on Skype, they're often doing their homework at the same time as they're doing this, or they're talking about the day. So I would just start by saying, before you call something an addiction, get more curious about it. Because I think we can always get more curious about why people are using a video game. Yes?
Yeah, when you were talking about sort of the support system that's in place for that, when you were talking before about the engineering, you said repetition makes the world feel more familiar and it's a greater sense of purpose. I'm wondering if you feel like basically you have a whole bunch of gamers doing similar tasks, so there's a repetition in that, right? They're all trying to accomplish a goal. So if that gives them sort of a shared sense of meaning as a result, like that familiarity and meaning kind of opens the door for these kind of more healing, personal interactions.
Yes, community definitely is important, and I think that's part of it. I think it also, though, is offset by this other part, which is the pattern looks like it means something, but we're not sure. It's spooky. That's what the uncanny is. It's sort of spooky. And most of us that have played Minecraft have had that strange experience where we're playing, and it's a little creepy, because we're sort of in that world, and it looks sort of familiar, but it also looks very strange. So I think it's two things. I think there's a community there, but a lot of times the patterns that are represented in the game that are uncanny is designed to give us a sense that something's going on that means something, but I'm not sure what it is. A great question. Someone else had their hand up? You had your hand up in the back, did you see? Okay, well.
I did, just to point out that from what I've seen when the kids play, when they have other friends on, occasionally one of them decides to go a little rogue and start griefing. Mm-hmm. And if anyone hasn't heard that term, it's when they start wrecking other people's creations. And they really learn a lot about controlling that situation and either banning that person temporarily from the server or ganging up and saying, hey, you stop doing that or something. But it's like a microcosm of what we would think of as maybe the playground when we were younger.
Forget the playground, it's a microcosm of the world. I mean, look around. We see people wrecking things all the time, right? We're struggling as a society to try to figure out how to resolve conflicts. We have crises of diversity and environment over and over again. We're wrecking things. And so one of the things that video games like Minecraft can do is really give people a place to practice if adults will get out of the way. Because one of the things that I've noticed from my experience on servers that were combined educators and kids playing is that the minute the grown-ups went in there, we screwed things up. But left to their own devices, again like a hack, sometimes inelegantly, people would resolve their conflicts. Someone would be caught griefing and say, okay, well, I'll help you build this house. Someone else would say, well, if we ban that person, how are they ever going to learn not to do that? People would come together and kids would learn how to resolve conflicts. And part of what's happening is we've got a whole bunch of grown-ups running the planet that never learned how to resolve conflicts very well. And one of the things that I think Minecraft can really do for us is give us an environment where we can practice some of that. Yes?
One thing that I've ever learned about allowing my children to just play video games with their own heart's content is that they get to experience consequences often and accurately without having these consequences affecting their actual lives. And I feel like, in my generation, not having games as we grew up, we didn't get that. And all of our consequences were actual real life consequences. And so, I feel like allowing your children to actually play this video game, they are becoming more evolved than I am and more able to cope with the real world and consequences because they've had far more of them than I have on such a short imaginary scale.
Well, thank you for bringing that up because now we can talk about TNT, right? Let's talk about one of the biggest things I've seen in some of the servers was when someone goes happy with TNT and blows up a lot of stuff and then asks the world admin, can you please roll back the world so that the TNT's gone? And the answer is no, okay? Because you matter. And what you do matters. And what you say in the world matters. And when you lob TNT into the world, it has an impact. And things are never the same. They can come back a bit, but they're never the same. And one of the things that's great about Minecraft and TNT is you learn that yes, you make a big boom and you had an impact, okay? Just like I now, when I chop down trees in Minecraft, plant a sapling, even though nobody's looking, right? Even though I'm not on a server, I'm not doing it, and I'm doing it in solo play, I plant a sapling because I think ahead. I know that I want those there in the future. Wouldn't that be nice if we actually did that in the world around us? That for every tree we deforested, someone was coming along and planting a sapling, even though no one was looking? That we'd somehow internalize that sense of social responsibility that you can actually internalize playing this game. Someone else had their hand up. Was it? Yes.
I made a redstone world with my brother, and I thought it was going to be like with a bunch of cool buildings and stuff. And then he started playing with TNT, and there was a bunch of giant craters in the ground. And we made this train station where he would spawn a bunch of minecarts and then TNT minecarts, and then I would ride in it, and it just kept on going, and then it would explode, and I'd go like flying in the air. And it ended up being really fun, and I didn't really care if my buildings got wrecked.
So things didn't go according to your plan, and you had fun anyway. And you know what? There are a lot of grown-ups around here that are living life pretty miserable because things are not going according to our plan. And if we could actually just keep that playful attitude, what my colleague Jane McGonigal refers to as a gameful attitude, it would give us more mental flexibility. Because what you just described is what we in psychology language call mental flexibility. The ability to look at a situation and reframe it and say, you know what? This could be fun. It's definitely different. It's not what I planned, but it could be fun. And you end up learning things from it. That's a great example. Yes?
So, I have a child that plays Minecraft, like he mentioned earlier, maybe 40 hours on a weekend. How can we use Minecraft to make sure that he doesn't become, because I think, when he goes into the Minecraft world, he is somewhat kind of blocking out the rest of the world, where he doesn't, go out and play with his friends and do real world type stuff. So how can I use Minecraft to make sure that he does both, real world stuff and not just play Minecraft?
So that's a great question. And let me sort of help by tweaking this concept of the real world. Because first you can sort of take a step back and sort of reflect that there's only one brain. We only have one brain and one limbic system, which is why when people cyberbully, even though it's not happening right next to them, it still feels bad. That we have one brain and one emotional center, so that what your child is doing is real. It feels real, it's experienced as real, it's the same thing. But what I would say is if you know something that your kid is really interested in, then I would say let's try to figure out how to work with that. Do you want to have a Minecraft party? Do you want to design a Minecraft party? Do you want to have a party at the house? Do you want to have a virtual party? I'm all about throwing parties, can you tell? But I would, it's sort of like how I deal with when people come into my office and they're upset because people are looking at cell phones. And I'm like, you know what? That's got their attention. So you need to work through that because there's something compelling about that. And if your child is playing that game so much that it's somehow making him feel meaningful, then we don't want to take that away. We want to figure out how can we bring more of that meaning and bring more people into that. And I'd also, say, hey, can you play socially? Have more people come in, right? So the biggest takeaway for that is try to remember there's only one real life, right? Even if it's mediated by technology, it's still real life. Yes?
I have two daughters, 5 and 7, and I use time with Minecraft as a currency or a punishment. Good behavior, more, bad, less. Is that a bad idea?
It's not something I tend to recommend unless you use what I call the Dickens principle, which is if your child liked to read Charles Dickens or another form of great literature, and you would say, you know what, if you're really good, I'm going to let you read some more Shakespeare, or let you do some more algebra, and if you're really bad, I'm going to take away your Shakespeare or take away your algebra. Because Minecraft and technology in general is the building blocks for future careers and future meaningful activity. And every time we restrict kids from that, we are restricting the future makers of our society. So I would say come up with some other things. I would say, have them going on a server that has an economy and say you can earn credits, right? If you really want to geek out, have your own Minecraft server that has an economy, and then they can play, but then they earn parts of the economy by doing things or not. But I never think taking, if I really think, and I do, that a video game is an art form and has the power to heal, I'm never going to deny it. I'm never going to deny access to it. So I'd say no. Yes, Tim?
I would say that the twist on that is that don't abstract play from learning. Play is learning and learning is play.
Yes.
And so what they're doing here is, you know, it actually is helpful for their future development. So I would underscore that.
Right. Well, and I would build in some building blocks for a few years from now when they're adolescents and start negotiating. That what you want to do is not negotiate time, but negotiate the economy in the world, or negotiate something in the world. Because I think, as Tim mentioned, play is learning and learning is play. And this stuff is, you know, in 10 years, I do not think we're going to be having some of these discussions. I think we're all going to be so used to technology. It's sort of like way back when people are like, I don't know how we're going to manage with email. I'm not going to have time to check email. I can't do email. And some people actually didn't have email for a while. Now we're like, you know what? We made time. We stopped watching as much Survivor on TV or something else. We managed to find the time we need to do the things that are sort of important or meaningful. The problem is that adults and kids are often not in agreement what's meaningful. It goes to what I call the 40 bits principle, which is that you have 11.7 million bits of information your mind is processing every single second. And of that 11.7 million bits, only 40 are those you're conscious of. And the problem is that adults and kids want to be conscious of different 40 bits. And so they fight about those 40 bits. No, those 40 bits need to be for homework. No, they need to be for Minecraft. No, they need to be for Call of Duty. No, they need to be for Halo. No, they need to be for setting the table. It's a huge turf war over 40 bits of consciousness. So try to think of it that way and sort of say, you know, can I take a step back? Is it really that important that I kind of try to hijack those 40 bits? Because half the time it's not. You know, it was a big letdown as a therapist when I realized that I wasn't always the most important person in the room that the kid or the adult was talking to. Like, I kind of started this job thinking, oh, this is really great. People are going to be like a captive audience. They're going to listen to all the pearls of wisdom that drop from my lips. I'm going to, you know, help them. And what really happened was I learned how to get out of the way and just say, well, what happened next? That's not a very glamorous job, right, for a living. What happened next? Well, then what happened? What did you think about that? Sounds really boring, but it's actually pretty curative because it helps train our minds to be able to then walk out of the office and go, well, what happens next? What happens if I do that? What happens if I don't do that? What if I realize I have a choice to refrain from doing that? Then life gets really interesting.